what are some of the most common challenges that people face when they are trying to buy or even build a home in rural areas?
Well, it's not easy to buy a home in the country. They're pricey, but so are homes in the city. They have to deal with the septic system, and the better the location, the better the view, it's going to be pricier.
Your insurance typically is higher in the country because you are serviced by a volunteer fire department, but it can be really worth it. I wouldn't give up my house for anything. So if you want to live in the country, have at it, but be prepared.
Welcome to Lawrence Real and Local, Keepin' It Real podcast presented to you by the Lawrence Board of REALTORs. We're your go-to source for all things real estate in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm Lexi Haskin with Flint Hills Mortgage.
And I'm Campbell Reagan with McGrew Real Estate. Together, we're here to make the journey to home ownership a breeze. Join us as we share insider insights, expert advice, and a dose of fun along the way.
Hello and welcome to Lawrence Real and Local, Keepin' It Real podcast of the Lawrence Board of REALTORs. My name is Lexi Haskin with Flint Hills Mortgage.
Oh, and I'm Rob Hulse with the Lawrence Board of REALTORs.
He is my guest co-host today.
Ooh, co-pilot.
And we are joined by two amazing guests. I'll let them introduce themselves.
I'm Deborah Becker, and I'm with Movement Mortgage.
I'm Randy Russell with Stevens Real Estate.
And today we're going to be talking about rural housing challenges and solutions and just addressing those unique home ownership issues and just kind of diving it in. So, a lot of people don't know about how to work through those problems and what even goes into rural areas or even at USDA loans and different things like that and what goes into it. So, we're pretty thrilled to have you guys here.
Glad to be here. It's a good topic.
So not only do people not know about navigating that, they don't even know those opportunities exist for them to be a buyer, right? Or for a seller to take advantage of that marketplace. So this education is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's an affordable option too that a lot of people don't realize. So.
I think a lot of people don't. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, or USDA, developed this program decades ago, and the design of it was to retain people in smaller communities so their schools don't close and attract new people to those smaller communities. So by definition, it has to be in a town with a population under 20,000 people. So Lawrence doesn't work, and Topeka doesn't work, and Overland Park doesn't work, but all those little towns in between and north and south do. So, if you head down 59 Highway and get past the turnoff to Clinton Lake, after that, the houses start to be in the rural designated area. So technically you can still be in Lawrence, but it has to be on the outskirts. If you go north of town, past Johnny's, past the turnpike exit or entrance, then there you start to get into those communities. So they exist, and it's a wonderful program.
So it can be in unincorporated parts of Lawrence, so to speak?
If you go to the USDA property eligibility site, and you can just Google that, it'll take you there, and you put in an address, it'll tell you whether it's an eligible property or not, and it'll also draw a map, and you can see the actual road cutoffs. Like if you head east on K10 before you get to Eudora, 1057 is the cutoff there. So that golf course, the driving range there, is on that road. And once you get east of that road, then you're good. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people even realize that there are places in Douglas County that are eligible for USDA.
Mm-hmm. DeSoto, Eudora, Baldwin, Lecompton, all eligible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Perry,
thank you.
Oskaloosa, McLeod.
Well, then we're getting into Jefferson County.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
It's all,
Well,
but Jefferson County, all of those cities, Leavenworth County, all of the cities except for Leavenworth itself are all eligible.
Yeah, Franklin County,
Miami. Yeah, we have a lot of areas, and there are plenty of people that will buy a house in Ottawa because they're eligible for 100% financing and make that 20-minute trip up 59, to get to Lawrence.
Yeah.
Because of the option of having 100% financing.
Yeah. Well, so what are some of the most common challenges that people face when they are trying to buy or even build a home in rural areas?
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know, probably, is that our first question?
That is our first question.
There's things that they don't have in town, like they have to deal with the septic system. They may have to deal with propane or all electric. They don't have natural gas. They may have a well that they have to deal with. Just general maintenance, maybe fences or what they're mowing for an area. They may need bigger equipment to mow a bigger piece of property. I think that covers that.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And I would say from a financing standpoint, houses that are on acreage tend to be higher priced. So you're getting into a realm where a lot of people are looking for affordable housing. So while 100% financing might be available, when you're talking about a house with 20 acres, you're not talking about an entry-level price point. So that can be one of the things. People want to live in the country, but it comes usually with a higher price per square foot because of the acreage. Another aspect that people get surprised by is that you can run into an issue if you're buying a property with 30 or 40 acres attached to it. It can be hard to find comps or comparables. So when an appraiser goes out there, they're looking for 3 properties that have sold in the last 6 to 12 months that are similar in acreage size and whatnot. And that can be a challenge for the appraiser. So the financing might run into a bit of a hurdle there. Your insurance typically is higher in the country because you are serviced by a volunteer fire department. So the volunteer firefighters have to jump in their vehicle, drive to the volunteer fire department station, get the truck with the water on it, and then come to your house while Rome is burning. So your premiums tend to be a little higher.
Yeah.
Is there a max number of acres that are eligible?
Technically, no, but Fannie and Freddie, your conventional loan guideline source, they don't really like to go beyond 30-ish. If the comps are there, they'll do it. But again, if you're looking at an 80-acre tract, it's hard to find 3 houses that have sold in the last year that are 80-acre tracts that are comparable to that property. Luckily, with a rural property, you can go up to 10 miles away from the subject. So you can be south of Eudora, for example, but use Lawrence, Baldwin, Wellsville, all of those areas around there within 10 or so miles. That's even a little flexible. In town, you're supposed to be within about a mile for a comp.
Cool.
I'm going to ask you a question.
I will have an answer for you, Randy.
Are there still caps on a USDA loan?
The cap is not on the purchase price necessarily. Regular
income.
Conforming limits, it's income, but the income guidelines are very generous. A family of 1 to 4 right now, household income in Douglas County is capped at $117.
Oh, wow.
And it's like $153 for a family of 4 to 9. Or 5 to 9, excuse me. So it's very generous.
Okay.
The thing that's a little quirky that sometimes makes people ineligible for a USDA loan is that it's got the strictest debt to income ratio limits. So they don't want the housing portion of your income, or that payment shouldn't represent more than about 30%, 29 to 30% of your overall income. And then once we add in anything from the credit report, student loans, car payments, minimums on credit cards, when you add that to the house payment and divide into gross income, it shouldn't be more than about 41 or 42%. Whereas with a conventional loan, you can go up to 50%, and with an FHA loan, you can go to 56.9%, and with a VA loan, there's no rules.
And the rates on that USDA are
fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in line with FHA, VA, and conventional most of the time.
Okay.
Is there a funding fee?
There is a funding fee, but it is the lowest funding fee of all of the government loans. So you're looking at 1% of the loan amount added on to the loan itself. So if you had a $100,000 purchase, your loan would be $101,000. With the VA first-time use, it's 2.15% of that loan amount, and it goes up to 3.3% on subsequent use. FHA is 1.75%. It also has the lowest mortgage insurance of those programs.
So someone going down this path, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Are they required to have some money of their own? Could sellers pay?
You're getting into the weeds there a little bit, but it's a great clarification. So the seller can pay up to 6% of the purchase price towards closing costs, and you shouldn't need that much.
Yeah.
You should need 2%, maybe, but depends on the loan amount and whatnot. But the seller can pay for closing costs. So you could negotiate that $100,000 house, maybe offer 106, have the seller pay $6,000. That'll cover inspections. You literally can walk in getting your earnest money back if the numbers are done well. And I think there's so many lenders in town that do this well. So that's a
Subject
conversation to have. It can also be gifted funds. It can be almost every 401k now since COVID will let you take out a low interest rate loan against your 401k so that you're not withdrawing from your retirement, you're borrowing against it, and you pay it back through payroll deduction, which I much prefer than people tapping out in their retirement account. So there are lots of ways. That's part of what good lenders do is help troubleshoot those issues. And but the USDA is a great entry point for those people that are buying in those smaller communities.
I love that you brought up the 401k thing.
Yeah, it's a what do they call it? It's not a hat trick, but just little magic sauce.
Well,
there.
the penalties are so severe to do an early withdrawal, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's so a lot of the times people using these programs, down payment assistance, USDA, are first-time home buyers. So they might have $8,000 in their 401k or $2,125. They don't have a big amount, but they have all of those years of compound interest ahead of them. So to tap out and pull that out with the penalties, you're taking $8,000 and you're reducing it down to $2,700.
That's a really good point. Yeah. It won't continue to grow.
It won't. So leave it in there, take the loan against it, or get mom and dad to maybe gift you a little bit of money. You always skip the month after you close, so you'd have maybe a little bit of money to
little cushion
gift them back. Who cares?
Yeah.
But yeah, a little bit of cushion. And even if they had a few dollars, how many people don't buy a house and need a refrigerator or need a fence because they have a dog and 2 toddlers that are going to wander off? So I always like to try to troubleshoot that. And USDA gives you that great entry point where you don't need the down payment. So it's optimal.
Now, USDA does not loan against manufactured homes.
They do not in Kansas at this time.
But they do modular.
Modular, but you and I both know that there are this many modular homes in the state of Kansas. A lot of people, a lot of people will conflate modular and manufactured. A modular home is components that were brought to the site, and Lego building blocks, if you will, and put together. A manufactured home arrives on site with a VIN number attached to it, with that wide load trailer, that you're following on the highway, and then they put it on a permanent foundation. So at this time in Kansas, no, you can't get an existing manufactured home. But there you get, maybe you use an FHA loan. Currently, Movement offers a down payment assistance where we lend them the down payment for either 3.5% or 5% of the purchase price to help with closing costs too. And so that might be an option if you're buying rurally. It's a manufactured home. Maybe your debt to income ratio doesn't fall within the guidelines that are required. There are other solutions. And again, that's
plan B.
Yeah, plan B. I mean, who doesn't as a lender? Lexi will attest to this. We like plan A, B, C, and maybe have D in the wings.
Yeah.
As many options as you can put together, and then you start weaning out which one we're going to start with, and then we'll go to this one if we need to. So.
Something you might look at if you have a manufactured home or a modular home and don't know what you have. A manufactured home comes in on wheels. It has a trailer tongue on it. It has a metal frame that's under the house if you can't find a VIN number, because a lot of times they get taken off. A modular home has a wood subfloor under it. So if you can get underneath it through a crawl space or a basement, that's a good way to tell. So just food for thought there.
It's good.
Back in the day, there was talk about if it's on a permanent foundation.
I've seen them on pier and tie systems, so you never know.
Yeah.
You
So
know.
that's not a
No, the differential is
standard.
that Lego building block thing versus the undercarriage, metal undercarriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And with manufactured homes too, with financing it, you can only have financing on it if it was built after June 15th, 1976. So you have to be aware of when it was built too.
Excellent point. And if you want to know why that is up until that time, it was kind of free range on building manufactured homes. After that date in 1976, they were built to HUD standards, Housing and Urban Development. So that's why there's the cutoff.
And in rural areas, I mean, there are a lot, well, not necessarily modular homes, but manufactured homes too. So even if we don't have can't lend USDA on it, it is still a very affordable option for people in those areas in order to start building equity of some sort and to be basically paying themselves instead of a landlord.
Right. And I mean, manufactured homes maybe aren't as desirable as a conventional stick-built home, but as you said, the entry point for them can be a lot lower. The value or the price per square foot is much lower than a stick-built home. So you'll see out in rural communities they could afford the 5 acres and put a manufactured home on it, but they couldn't afford the 5 acres and a stick-built 2-story 2,200 square foot home. You know, the difference can be $150,000, $200,000.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you're distinguishing between those two, because I honestly thought manufactured, modular, 6 one way, half a dozen the other, but it's very clearly a different thing.
It's very clear. And I will tell you, many, many people, realtors down to any individual, will usually conflate the terminology or think one is like in a manufactured home park. That's a manufactured home or trailer, and then a modular's on a permanent foundation, and that is not the case. They're structurally different, and they're treated differently. You can get a conventional loan on a modular home. You cannot get you can get a conventional loan on a manufactured home, but the rules are different.
Yeah.
So modular's treated just like stick-built.
Yeah.
Cool.
Just going all into the weeds, and I love it. I love it.
Living in the weeds.
And now question number 2.
So, well, actually, we went through 4 questions without even actually looking at our paper.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was
Good question
fabulous. We
writing.
just kept going
Very
all
intuitive.
through it. So, kind of going into land and zoning issues. So, how have you guys seen zoning laws and land use restrictions differ in those rural areas versus the more urban settings? And what should buyers be aware of with that?
Well,
Okay, you read your notes, and I'll jump in with what I have.
that was a mouthful.
So on a rural property, typically if you're looking at building, for example, then your contractor's going to handle all of the nuances of that property, but you should know what they are. It has to be properly surveyed. There's sometimes, like in Douglas County, you'll have a family that's going to shave off 10 acres and let a kid build on it. That has to be okay with the county. It can't just be something between mom, dad, and you. There has to be a certain amount of frontage, a certain number of feet of frontage in most cases.
Access.
Yeah,
For
road access, yeah.
The size of the parcel, Douglas County, in my experience, over 26 years, has gone from 5 to 10 to 20, where they were trying to slow down the growth and retain the agricultural and pastoral aspects of our area. You would have on the larger size lots, of course, you're running into what you might have in the way of comparables for your build job. And if you are buying something in a rural area and adding on to it, they may have covenants in those developments. Some of the, like I live south of Eudora, Douglas County, but it is in a development where there's like 13 other houses and they're all larger acre tracts, but we have covenants. And so maybe you can have chickens, but no cows or horses. And if you build an outbuilding, you have to have the materials for that outbuilding have to be the same as
To match.
to match the house. And maybe the outbuilding size is restricted. So, you want to be aware of all those things. I think the thing that comes up most in my world is that people just underestimate how much it costs to build in the county compared to buying existing construction. So your cost per square foot is always going to be more for a new property. But when they say, here's my budget of $350 and they want 20 acres and a 2,000 square foot plus house, you have to have that, reality talk, and that's not always fun. They might be able to buy a $350 house in town for that, but they're not going to get the 20 acres. The 20 acres is going to suck up half of that budget potentially.
And despite that, and this is a way big left turn, despite that, and the county from going from 5 to 10 to now 20, we still in 2024 have issued nearly as many building permits in the unincorporated areas of the county as we have in Lawrence, Kansas, in proper city.
And why would you say that is?
We have such a lack of inventory and development and annexation for the city of Lawrence. So the county, I think, is well-intended and very purposefully saying, whoa, let's build and develop in the city limits and grow our footprint. And so you've got that push and pull between the county and the city. There's certainly developments that are ready, and we need to get moving forward with them in the city, but it's just very, very hard. Very hard.
When we were building 26 years ago, there were no water meters available.
Yeah,
that was the
that's
county's
true.
way of restricting the rural growth in Douglas County was they just wouldn't give you any water.
Well, that'll do it.
And there came all the wells.
Make you pay.
We
through
bought
the
our
nose to
little
get it.
3.5 acre tract, and it was 6 years before we could get a meter.
Yeah.
We were 23rd on the list, and it took 6 years for them to unfreeze it. It had been over 10 years since they sold a water meter.
Cistern water.
Yeah. No, I told Michael, no wells, no cistern. We're waiting for the actual water that comes to
But
the house.
affordability is greatly impacted
Very
because
much
of
so.
all of this, because of the 5 to 10 to now 20 acre requirement for a home site. And acres cost.
Acres cost. And then you've got $6,800, I believe, is the current cost of a meter. Then per foot, you're paying for the installation that they have to bring the water up to the house. And then, you've got, when you're talking about the affordability rurally, the infrastructure, that driveway has to be longer. The utilities will charge you from that main point all the way up to the road, from the road to your house. And
And then they have septic system.
yes, the old lateral field situation.
Another $25,000.
Is that what they're running now?
Yeah, 18 to 25. Depends on where you're at. You got to make sure the land perks. That it's going to drain properly. If you get farther south in Franklin County, they have some issues with drainage. So they have to haul dirt in. So it could be quite a bit more. It could be a $40,000, $50,000 deal.
Wow.
And so again, if you have a great contractor who you're working with that knows rural building requirements and whatnot, and I would not use a city builder to build rurally unless you had a lot of confidence in their detective work, but there are a lot of nuances to building in a rural area, and there are a lot of costs. It's going to double, in many cases, double your per square foot cost over buying new existing construction. So, but it can be really worth it. I wouldn't give up my house for anything. It was, it's what you wanted to build. So if you want to live in the country, have at it, but be prepared.
Is there a minimum square footage requirement? Like a tiny home in the
Unless it's a subdivision that requires that.
Unless it's
has the
covenants.
Yeah, so there were covenants
typically,
where we
no.
had to have a certain footprint size.
But for the loan, the rural economic development loan, you could put a tiny home if it's built to the standards.
I have not done a tiny home, it hasn't come up for me to explore.
Curious because you could even do something temporarily, so that 10 years later you could.
Well, USDA in Kansas doesn't do new construction, so it would have to be buying an existing one.
Gotcha.
And I haven't come across that yet.
Have you come across barndominiums?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Not with USDA.
Not
with USDA, but the
They don't allow 'em.
barndominiums. I haven't had it come. I believe that they do, but I haven't had it come up. The cost of a barndominium is usually not a small amount, and it might be more than what somebody that qualifies for USDA can afford.
I haven't really used USDA for quite some time because people haven't asked.
And that surprises me
and I
with
inform
where
them.
your where you typically work.
I just think there's a lot more money out there, and people are finding different ways to get around it. So, but there was a period of time everybody wanted 100% financing.
Oh yeah, they still do. They still do.
Yeah,
And USDA is a really good opportunity.
It is.
I mean, leveraging your money. Who wouldn't want 100% at a low interest rate when they could use their money and their resources in other ways, investment-wise, to grow their assets that way?
I'll give you the one downside that I come across is that if you are a listing agent and seller and you have 3 offers that come in and one's cash, one's 20% down conventional financing, and another one is a USDA loan at 100%, you're probably letting go of that government loan offer because there are what are called MPRs or minimum property requirements. And they're not terribly dramatic, but if you've got a little wood rot or some cracked and peeling paint on that house as the seller, it's going to have to get repaired. Now, one thing that has come about since I started is it had to be the seller that made those repairs. Now they'll allow the buyer to make the repair. So they don't care who's scraping and priming and painting that shed that has to be done. They just need it to be done. Right.
Yeah.
In most cases. There are some exceptions to getting an escrow, yes, for that. But that said, that is the one downfall of 100% financing and or government financing.
It's a really good point because we've had competing offered, great property in the country, pristine, right? Qualifying property may likely have competing offers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the marrying of the property, the right opportunity, the right property.
You start
that
shaving
matches
off
up.
your headaches.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Randy, can you talk us through some of the inspections in the process when you go under contract that happen with these rural properties, whether it's like the septic, well, all those things?
Well, there's not too much well water.
No more.
Well, there is some if you're in the right area. I would say over around Eudora, Leavenworth County, which is just right outside of Lawrence. There's the Tonganoxie Sands aquifer that runs through there. A lot of people are on that. But you get out in the country, there's not too much well water. Either it's not good. You can get over North Lawrence, and there's some wells over there on 7th Street that have a lot of iron in it, and it's hard to get out. So it's better to be on rural water, but there's some areas that can't get the rural water there. So, I would say wells kind of out for the most part. If you have a piece of ground, you buy a piece of ground, you're going to do your due diligence, and you're going to go in, and you're going to inspect and make sure that the ground perks.
Describe that so people understand.
perk test.
Percolate.
Percolation means that the ground absorbs the water for your septic system. Now, it might not be a septic system. It might not be a septic and lateral system. It might be a lagoon. Franklin County does a lot of lagoons. There's some around here that do lagoons, but you don't see them too much in Douglas County. Jefferson County does some lagoons. They don't like them. Some of the counties don't like them. Franklin County, because of the soil content down there, they do a lot of lagoons. So
like heavy clay,
yeah,
just bad news.
Yeah.
But when you get into the, what do we call it, sandy loam or what?
Yeah.
I'm not an ag
You're
guy.
right, Rob.
I'm not an ag guy.
Yeah.
I know just enough maybe to throw a term
Just
out.
enough to scrape by.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. But so soil composition is a huge deal.
It is a huge deal. Yeah. You want to make sure that the ground perks. You can do your perk test, and it's going to absorb properly, or have some kind of a system set up, whether it's lagoon or septic tank.
For those that have not lived rurally, like I did not until we built, and I did not know what a septic system was. And so my husband took me out in the wintertime and showed me where the green stripes were in people's lawns and explained that, they weren't hooked up to the city septic. So you needed a tank and then a series of tunneling tubes through the yard back and forth.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about the septic system.
Yes, exactly. Well, I think there might be somebody listening that doesn't know what we're talking about. So that's where your house waste goes. And so your soil has to perk so that as it dissipates, these tubes have outlets, holes, if you will, and it leaches into the soil. And that's what makes it go away. So if your soil doesn't perk, if it's heavy clay, rocky, whatever, then it's not, that septic system's not going to work. You have to find an alternative. He asked me, so what happened when you flush the toilet? Where does it go? And I said, away.
Yeah, it's just gone.
I don't want to talk about it, really.
Well, we'll define that a little bit.
Away.
You have a 1,000-gallon tank, and all the solids float to the bottom. And a septic tank
sink to the bottom. Help me out.
sinks to the bottom,
Okay.
yeah. And the tank has a bacteria, and it eats itself, okay? Does away with most of it. And the liquid, the fluid, rises to the top, and a septic tank is always full if it's working properly and doesn't have cracks in it. And that fluid goes out into the lateral field, which is out in the yard, and then that evaporates into the ground, into the air. So that's the way it works.
It's like I asked about all the inspections, but then now that I'm listening to it, I'm just like, ugh.
So they'll, and Randy had a
TMI.
great point. They'll inspect not only if the soil is percolating properly, but also they will test the septic the lateral field itself to make sure that everything's moving through it. So because they can detect whether there's maybe a broken part of it where it's leaching where it shouldn't be, and so there's a few tests there. So you have to either pay for that system to be installed. That's one thing you should know about building in the country. But the inspection wise, yes, wells, the lateral fields. What would be another thing that would be different? Propane. Yeah, so propane.
You don't have very many options when you're in the country. You either have propane or you have electric. I guess you could have wood, but that's a lot of work.
We're rural, and our development luckily has natural gas, but most of them do not.
There's not a whole lot of that out there. I think around Eudora, and then there's a small corridor down 59, and you get outside of Baldwin, just right outside the edge, there's some natural gas. But the rest of it is going to be propane or electric.
Yeah.
So.
Well, just one more like kind of question segment, because going through here, I was looking at okay, we've touched a lot of these just by talking, but before we go to our fact or fiction segment, just to add a little fun part, let's just talk about unique maintenance and ownership considerations. I mean, what are some long-term maintenance considerations for just owning a rural home that people might not think about 100%?
And you said these are fun, right? This is the fun part?
The fact or fiction is fun. We're not there yet.
Okay. All right.
If you have a septic system, it should be pumped every 3 to 5 years is what they recommend. If you don't pump that system, then it gets clogged up down in the lateral field. Then you're buying a new system down the road.
So you want to make sure the solid waste that sinks is what you pump.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that you have
If you
room.
don't clean that out occasionally, it's going to go into the field, and then it's going to clog the field, and then you have a problem.
Yeah.
So, and that's about $12,000 for just the field. That's assuming your tank stays okay.
And how much is it cost to pump?
It runs about $275 to $350.
So, boy, isn't that worth it? That's just don't
think about it. You're not paying for that city sewer tax.
Yeah.
And that's pretty cheap over a 3-year period or 5-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And very costly if you don't spend the $275 routinely.
Exactly.
To
a lot
get
of people
done.
don't. A lot of people let them go.
Yeah.
Surprisingly enough, I'll get to places that say, "Well, we haven't ever pumped," and I'm like, "A 20-year-old house." And you're like, I don't know what to tell you.
They might charge you extra for that.
Yeah, they do.
They do. I know they do.
They do.
I know they do. Because we went over the 5-year timeline. After the boys moved out, we figured it wasn't as much in need. And he could pinpoint exactly how, not exactly, but he knew about how long it had been by what he had to pump out of there.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God. And so are there any other considerations that people need to think about when it comes to maintenance out in the country?
Well, if they did have a well, and I do see them come up on occasion, you'd have to inspect that regularly. That's inspected if you're going to purchase, and I've had at least 3 or 4 times the well came back as, oh, you shouldn't be drinking this water. And they have to treat it and retest it and whatnot. But that would be something I would definitely maintain. That's the health of your household. And then just weird stuff. It's windy out in the country. I mean, literally where I live, the wind comes sweeping down the plain. So the outside of the house, luckily we're in a stone house because that's what my husband does. But all of our furniture has to be wrought iron, the outside stuff, or else it's going to blow away. We've had trampolines come through the yard. Our trampoline hit the neighbor's house, so that was fun. Looked like a Pringle after that. But yeah, you've got the lawn situation that he talked about.
A
lot of grass to mow.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you let a little of it go to brome, and just depending on the size of your get a goat. No goats allowed.
No goats allowed in your subdivision.
No.
Yeah.
So have you guys, how do natural disasters such as flooding or wildfires impact rural homeowners? And are there any other special considerations? I mean, I know there could be flood zones and different things like that.
Mm-hmm. Floodplains.
Floodplains, yeah.
And surprisingly, I mean, there's floodplains. Everybody thinks of North Lawrence as being an area, and certainly by the levee for several blocks over, and then sporadically there are floodplain, and you have to have flood insurance, which is an additional cost. a lot of times people will look at those adorable houses in North Lawrence and find out that it's going to be an extra $275 a month for flood insurance, and they realize they could buy a house that costs $40,000 more and have the same house payment. So they then don't buy in North Lawrence. But it is just part of the charm, I guess. But along Naismith, 20th off of 23rd Street in Naismith, those houses are in a floodplain as well. If you notice when you drive down the median that's between the lanes in each direction is a big, I don't know, what is it, a culvert? What would you call a storm drainage system of whatever sort? And those houses are in a floodplain. They pay more for flood insurance.
They're scattered all over town.
Yeah, all over town. And all over the county.
But in the country, you really don't. I mean, most people don't build in a floodplain. They won't let you build in a floodplain. You can't put a septic system in a floodplain.
Yeah.
So actually, you have to have 3 acres of ground to put your septic system on now. That's a county requirement. So,
and I would say if you're looking at either building in a specific place or buying a rural property, talk to your insurance agent. Have them run the numbers, because that will take into consideration. That will bring into consideration whether that volunteer fire department's going to factor heavily. Credit scores factor in, so that's another layer. But also, we don't have the wildfires here like California, and we don't have tornadoes to the extent of places in Oklahoma. But your agent's going to be able to pinpoint what specifically will affect your coverage on that house, and that's part of whether you can afford that property or not.
Yeah. Well, I say let's get into fact or fiction really quick, and then you guys can give your closing remarks, and we'll just.
Can I do one? Can I do one?
You can say all of them, Rob, but don't say the answer.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the tip. All right. Fact or fiction? USDA loans are only available for farmers and people purchasing farmland.
You're the expert on this. You go for it.
Fiction.
Yep.
USDA loans are available to purchase for a family home in any community, rural or small town, as long as it's in a designated area, as I mentioned, with a population under 20,000.
Keep going?
Yeah, you can say all of them.
Okay, here we go. Rural homeowners often face higher insurance premiums due to distance from emergency services. Fact or fiction?
That would be a fact. What?
That is a fact.
Yeah.
That is a fact.
Good job.
I can't read my own notes.
It's cool that we actually talked about
We
this.
did.
Yeah.
We talked about volunteer fire departments.
Yeah.
And fire codes.
Yep.
I don't know I think, what is it, 9? Is that gets pretty high when it's...
Yeah, you don't. A 9 rating will get you a really healthy premium.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, fact or fiction? It's harder to get high-speed internet in rural areas, which can be a deal breaker for many home buyers.
Not so much anymore. I would say that is...
that's a middle.
That's a middle?
Yeah, I think that's a middle.
Yeah.
There is a lot of
Elon
advancement.
Musk's new Starlink, you can get service anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost the same price. I think it's about $100 a month. But, there's a lot of good companies out there. There's Kansas Broadband. There is AT&T has a good system that has high speed. And there's a whole slew of different companies out there. But you can pretty much go anywhere and get it. Now, there are some areas that probably might be questionable, but with that Starlink, I think you can go anywhere in the world, basically.
But it's better than it used to be.
Right.
That's for certain.
Yes, dial-up was part of our lives when we first built, and now we have Google Fiber, not Google Fiber, but the Midco Fiber. So it's pretty speedy. But if you're a work-from-home person, that's definitely a consideration.
Yeah.
Make sure it's going to be there for you.
But there's answers.
Yeah, solutions are the key
Solutions.
to everything. No, I mean answers, solutions, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last one.
Last one.
Homes in rural areas are more likely to be built using modular or prefabricated construction methods.
That's fiction.
Yes. And modular and mostly manufactured exist, but they are still a very small percentage of the homes that are available. The majority of homes you'll buy in a city or in a rural designated area are stick-built construction.
Now there's a lot more barn dominiums being built these days.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. And as long as the comps are there, which we're lucky in our area, there's enough of them to satisfy an appraiser, then they're treated just the same as a conventional home, conventional stick-built home.
Well, to end the episode, what's one thing you guys want to leave people with that are thinking about or considering rural housing and the affordability?
I would say from the financing standpoint, because that's my background, is find a lender that you know, like, and trust, a referral from someone or one of the two fabulous ladies that are sitting at this table, and find out what your options are. To know what is available to you in the way of housing programs, but also what your eligibility is from a payment standpoint, and let that be your starting point so you don't go out into the country and fall in love with that house up on the hill with 20 acres and you can see your family there, only to find out that the payment's going to be twice as much as you thought it would be, or something that's just not in your realm right now. I always say maybe that's not your first home. Maybe that's your next home. So let's start with one, gain some equity, put it into that next one. No problem with a dream. Just let's make it realistic and talk to a lender and get your finances in order first.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice.
Randy, what do you want to leave us with?
Well, it's not easy to buy a home in the country. They're pricey, but so are homes in the city. You know, now that they've changed the code to where it has to be on 20 acres, you figure it's not the same as buying a $50,000 to $70,000 lot in town. You know, you're spending $10,000 to $20,000 an acre, depending on where it sits. You know, and the better the location, the better the view, it's going to be pricier. So,
but existing homes in the country would be your interim point of checking out, and there's plenty of those.
That's true.
Well, thank you both for joining us. We're really happy and thankful that you guys made the time to come out here and just talk to us about this little topic.
Well,
little
thank
big
you.
topic.
Yeah. You guys are amazing. It's been really a great conversation.
Well, what you do for the community and offering the information is fabulous. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the
Cool.
Lawrence Public Library for letting us use this space, and signing off.
Thanks for joining us on Lawrence Real and Local, Keepin' It Real podcast. We appreciate our guests taking the time to join us. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you've enjoyed today's episode.
For more information, please visit us on the web at www.lawrencerealtor.com. And remember, whether you are buying, selling, or simply dreaming of your future home, we're here to help. Until next time, keep it real
And happy house hunting.